Okay guys, this is a 2008 Ford Fusion, and I'm bringing you in on the video where most of the work was done already. What is the work that's being done today? This here is what the work is. This is the old motor. Look at how nice, smooth on one side is. Nice, good, that's good. Look at the back. Railroad tracks. Once upon a time, you used to go to an auto parts store and they would smooth out these railroad tracks. You very rarely find them. And not only that, rotors tend to warp, meaning that they bend. They're not exactly smooth anymore, tendency. So what ends up happening when you go to brake, that wonderful sensation that you feel while you're braking, the nice vibrations, generally is a bad rotor. And I am notorious for bad braking, meaning that I will stop short in a heartbeat. The other thing I will do is on a hot, nice summer day, and I see a nice puddle of water, I will go ahead and splash it. Very bad to do that because rotors are metal. Metals that are suddenly immersed from hot temperature into cold, it's called quenching of the metal. And when you quench, you can warp a metal altogether. So I brought this car. I didn't realize there was railroad tracks on there. This is not supposed to be railroad tracks. It's supposed to be smooth. You got to take a look at the amount of metal you got left. You can tell it's significantly less on the inside versus the outside. You don't want that, because not only did it warp, but more than likely than not, at one point in time, someone drove without no brakes. I got brakes right there, sufficient enough for continued use. Won't change that today, but I am changing the rotor. Now, because of my driving style, I know that I have a problem. So I brought slotted rotors. Slotted. Usually they got directions like front side and stuff like that. A pair came for about $100. But had to take it apart. Took it apart. Basically what you're doing is taking off the brakes first. You take up your caliper first, then you take your brake housing off. And it's not too much, but biggest thing you got to look for is you got to have the tools when you're doing it before you start. And in this scenario, I broke a tool. Wonderful, right there. That's the tool that I broke. It's an adapter. It's a 1/2 inch or 3/8 adapter. I used a breaker bar to open the lug nuts. Go to a tire store. They will usually tighten your tires to a torque that is way beyond your ability as a normal person to go ahead and get it off without a torque bar. I mean a breaker bar. I use a breaker bar big time, but when I use a breaker bar, I made a mistake in that if you use a 1/2 inch socket, those big ones right there, with a small 3/8 drive, you will break the adapter. So if you use a 1/2 inch breaker bar, use a 1/2 inch socket. In this case, it was a 3/4 inch breaker bar. Socket that I needed to go ahead and get. And not too bad, because we have worked in the car before, so these axles are relatively new. We changed the axles out. That's not too bad, because if you're having an issue where you're taking it apart by yourself, you might have issues trying to get these things open, because we've done it before and under extreme strength with power tools. But this time around, I'm doing it by myself because I know they were pre-opened during the last repair, so I know my brother does not torque them excessively, so it's a good. But this is the new performance rotor. Pretty cool. Slotted. I bought it because I do extreme braking. I do go ahead and brake. First procedure is to put this back on, then put those 2 Allen screws right there on. I hope you see that right there. Put that on. Put those on to fasten it, and then you put your brake housing back on. So I'm about to do that. This is a 2008 Ford Fusion SE. Just trying to show you how to change your rotors. I'm sure there's plenty of videos on it. I'm not sure if I did the majority of the work already. So, and that tire is supposed to be under the car, by the way. That's a safety issue. So I'm letting you know it's a safety issue. In other words, don't do as I do, do as I say do. One of my supervisors used to say that, but all right, I'm about to put this stuff back together. I can't record while I'm putting it back together, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it on and stop, put it on and stop. Hope that helps. Bye. Keep on, hold on. Step one, putting that on. Now remember to line up those hoses, okay? Remember, front driver side, if it's got labels on it, make sure you follow the labels, huh? I'm putting in the 2 screws, hand tight first. Always try hand tight first, because if you put it in and it's not going in right with your hands, more than likely you will strip it. So try hand tight first. Always, and get it as flush as you can. It's flushed. I'm about to use my tool to tighten it up. Gonna have to pause in a second. Key thing when you're using your ratchet, down, left is tight, and the other way is loose. So righty tighty, right? If you're hitting it to the right, lefty loosey, something like that. Right now, I am going downward. So, about to tighten it up. Hold on. All right, just tighten that using this tool. Using this tool, I tighten it up. You have the right tools. This actually tool came out of a Walmart. Allen, what do you call it? Whatever specialized socket they call this, I forgot. It's a Walmart tool. You get one of those little boxes like that, $5. Out of all my tools, my professional mechanic tools, I didn't have this size. So I had to use my Walmart tool to go ahead and take it off and put it back on. But either way, that's the first to anchor the rotor into place. It's in place, nice and tight. Don't over tight it, because then when you go to take it off again, if you have to, God forbid, but that's not good. All right, next step, when you pull out calipers, when you're putting brakes back in, you always got to push the caliper piston back. Right now you see it sticking out, so, and you got to flush this here. That's usually a C-clamp. I'm about to go ahead and do that with a C-clamp first before I put the brake housing back on. So there's no way I'll put new brakes. It won't fit, basically, because this probably got more meat. This rotor got probably more meat in terms of metal, in terms of thickness than the other rotor. So when I go put brakes back, it won't fit. So I need to push the piston back before I go ahead and do anything else. So I'm about to get my C-clamp and do that. Okay, basically this is the way. You get your C-clamp. I put a socket on it. Usually if you got a bigger C-clamp, you won't have any problem, but basically you just want to push that piston back so you can make it flush. And make sure you position that somewhere towards the center. That's it. I'm about to go ahead and push that piston back. I'm hoping you see the difference. It's flush. Don't push it too far, but that will, generally an intelligent person would change the brakes while they're at it at this point in time, but those brakes are not too bad, so I'm not changing the brakes at this time. I have brand new brakes in the box from months ago, which I thought when I felt the vibration it was the brake pads. Come to find out it wasn't the brake pads. And also, if you feel vibrations, also you gotta know that the front end might be loose. Here in this scenario, this front end is not loose. We checked it twice, once in January and once actually last weekend before I went ahead, and because I wanted to make sure nothing else has come apart during the interim period. But anyway, it's done, it's flat. Now keep on going. Next part is putting this housing on. There's 2 screws back here, by the way. That's one screw over there and one down there. that this will bolt into. And they're pretty sizable bolts, actually. Quite sizable. This is the bolt. Pretty big to get that housing in right there into those two holes right there. So that's pretty big. Those holes are pretty big. That's my next step, is just putting that in there. The pad housing is back on. Again, hand tight these screws, please, before you go ahead and strip something. Hand tight it first. Housing's back on. I'm about to super tight it, but that's the next step. All right, brake pads back on. And I need to put these little clips on in a second. All right, one thing you need to know, these little skinny metal things that are there, little like piece of little skinny piece, there's two of them on this brake. They're a pain in the ass because when you put them on, they'll push the brake pads out. So you gotta have like basically a dexterity of having two hands to put the brake pads back into the caliper, because it's a pain in the ass because those things wanna go in the opposite direction. It'll pull the brake pads out. Just to let you know, it's a tricky scenario right there. There's two little pins of paint. Basically what they're doing is when you're not braking, it'll push the brake pads away from the rotor. All right, one thing you need to see also, see the screw, how corroded it is? This is how nice and clean. If you got an opportunity to change the screws and they fit well back in there, do it. I'm scared of this screw. I'm about to clean it off, but it's not screws like this that you want in your car, because they're already showing like wear and stuff, and so you got to clean them. And I'm about to use some brake cleaner and some other stuff on this, but do not put lubricant on it unless it's Loctite. But because this is the securing the brake caliper, and you don't want to put something that you're not going to be able to get off later, or will cause it to come off while you're driving or something like that. But I'm going to clean this thing off. The corrosion factor on this shit is horrible. But if you get that chance while you're putting stuff back, clean it off, go ahead and clean it off.